My mother pleaded with me to come home for Christmas. My name is Olivia, I'm 30 years old, and foolishly I actually believed this year might be different. She called me in London at 3 in the morning, weeping over FaceTime about how we never see each other anymore, and how the entire family desperately needed me there. 10-hour overnight flight crammed in economy, 2 exhausting layovers, a dead phone battery, and yet I still arrived at her doorstep in San Diego, my suitcase packed with gifts for my brother's children. I was drained, reeking of stale airplane coffee, my back aching from the journey. I rang the bell, my heart thumping with a childish, stupid hope that she might hug me the way she did when I was small. The door swung open. No greeting. No "how was your flight?" No embrace. Just my mother staring at my luggage and stating, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world, "You'll watch your brother's kids. We're going on a family trip." Why, brother Jake appeared in the doorway, sunglasses on, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, his 2 kids clinging to his arms. He grinned and said, "Hey guys, try not to wipe your noses on Aunt Claire. She's got jet lag." They all erupted in laughter, as if I were the punchline of a private joke. My parents, my brother, the kids, everyone was howling while I stood there with my hair a mess from travel and a credit card statement full of tickets I'd paid for. Brr. I didn't shout, I didn't cry. I simply felt something inside me turn off, like flipping a switch. I smiled, set my suitcase down in the entryway, looked my mother directly in the eyes and spoke one sentence. That was the moment everything changed. The laughter died. The color drained from their faces. My mother kept whispering, No, you can't be serious." By the time I was finished, their dream vacation was canceled. Their house was suddenly in jeopardy, and I was finally done being their unpaid nanny and personal ATM. Stay with me until the end, and I'll explain exactly how one so-called ungrateful daughter dismantled her family's perfect holiday and reclaimed her life in the process. The strange part is, the moment I uttered that single sentence, the entire room fell silent. But to truly grasp why, you need to understand what the people standing in that doorway had been doing to me for years. That tearful FaceTime call from London wasn't just about missing me. 2 weeks prior to that 3 a.m. drama, my mother had already texted me screenshots of outrageously expensive holiday packages, hinting that she and my dad could never afford such a trip unless I helped a little. Just this once. Just this once was how every single request began. Brr. When my father needed knee surgery, I wired money. When my brother Jake maxed out his credit cards on a doomed e-commerce venture, I helped consolidate his debt. Brr. When the water heater broke and the mortgage payment was late, I sent funds, only to see my mother post photos the following week from a trendy new brunch spot downtown. I live in a small apartment in London. I cook most of my meals at home. I walk to work in the rain, and yet somehow I was still paying for Uber Eats deliveries and streaming service subscriptions in a house I didn't occupy, on a continent I no longer called home. This time, however, before booking my own ticket, I paid attention. I saved every bank transfer, every PayPal receipt, every "thanks, honey, we'll pay you back when things settle" text. I also discovered something else, an email from the bank with my name on a mortgage I had no memory of authorizing. Years ago, they had quietly added me as a co-borrower to secure a better interest rate, and I had been covering the payment shortfalls ever since. Oh, while my mother cried on FaceTime about how much the kids missed me, Lily keeps asking when Aunt Claire is coming, I was sitting on my bed in London staring at my banking app, realizing the only time my family treated me as part of the unit was when a bill was due. Almost refused. I almost told her to sort it out herself. But then a different thought struck me. If they were willing to drag me across an ocean to use me as a free babysitter and walking credit card, I was finally ready to show them what it looked like when I stopped playing along. Booked my flight, but I also booked ABR, consultation with a financial advisor, downloaded 3 years of bank statements, and had a straightforward, legal document drafted from an online template. So, standing in that doorway in San Diego, while Jake chuckled and my mother announced my babysitting duties as a done deal, I wasn't just the tired, jet-lagged daughter they expected. I wheeled my suitcase inside, let the children bounce around my legs, and followed them into the kitchen. Their printed vacation itinerary was spread across the counter like a glossy promise: resort photos, flight times, family package in bold letters. My mother tapped the brochure. "See? This is why we needed you here, sweetheart. The kids will stay with you. We'll finally have a real break. You're always saying we should take better care of ourselves." I glanced at the resort's name, recognized the credit card number on the booking confirmation open on her phone, and felt that same internal switch flip once more. They assumed I had come home to be their built-in nanny and banker. I had actually flown 10 hours to do something I should have done years ago. I smiled and asked my mother to gather everyone in the dining room to go over a few things before they left. I opened my laptop on the table and pulled up the digital folder of receipts that would transform their family getaway into the last time any of them viewed me as a free resource. My father sat at the head of the table as if presiding over a formal meeting. My mother lingered. Ed by the counter, clutching the printed itinerary. Jake scrolled through his phone, only half listening. His kids, Lily and Noah, spun in circles on the tile floor. I slid my laptop closer, turned the screen so everyone could see, and said as calmly as possible, "Before you go anywhere, we need to talk about finances." Jake groaned. "Claire, come on, seriously? Now?" My father muttered something about my terrible timing. My mother gave me that wounded look. "Honey, we've been under so much stress. Can we please not start a fight right before we leave?" I didn't raise my voice. I simply clicked on the first folder labeled Miller Household and opened a spreadsheet. Every line was dated, color-coded, and brutally clear. "Last March," I began, "you called because the mortgage was 2 months behind. I wired $1,200. In June, Jake's business expenses maxed out his card. I sent $2,500. When the water heater broke, $900. When Dad's truck needed new tires, $600. When the electric bill was overdue, $300 here, $400 there. Every single month for 3 years. There's been something." I scrolled slowly, letting them watch the total stack up, highlighting entries as I spoke. "This doesn't include the Disney Plus, Hulu, Netflix, and Spotify family plans, your Walmart Plus subscription, the shared cell phone plan, or the random emergency Venmo requests that always seem to coincide with Black Friday or Labor Day sales." Jake straightened in his chair, the color leaving his face as he recognized Zed his own. "I swear I'll pay you back next month." Notes in the column. My mother's hand flew to her mouth when she saw screenshots of her texts requesting gas money to visit Grandma, followed immediately by photos of her at a new nail salon. My father's jaw tightened at the sight of a PayPal transfer labeled "knee surgery copay," alongside a receipt for a brand new, flat-screen TV that appeared in their living room the same week. "This isn't fair," my mother whispered. "You're making us look terrible." Bar. Shook my head. "I'm not making you look like anything. I'm just showing you what actually happened." Then I scrolled to the bottom, to the bolded total. "In the last 36 months, I said quietly, I have sent this household just over $62,000. The room went utterly silent. Jake blinked rapidly. My father stared blankly at the wall. My mother kept whispering, "No, that can't be right. That can't be right," as if repetition could alter the math. Reached into my bag, pulled out a thin stack of printed pages, and slid them onto the table next to their dream vacation itinerary. "This," I said, "is a simple agreement. It's not a lawsuit, it's not me taking you to court. It's just a formal record that all of you acknowledge you owe me this money and agree to start repaying it. Even if it's slowly, $50 a month, $100, whatever." I had it drafted using a legal template. My advisor reviewed it. "All it states is that this," I tapped the $62,000 on the screen, "was not a gift." "Why? Fath, brr. Finally snapped out of his daze. "We are family," he barked. "You don't put family in debt like this. What, are you going to sue your own parents?" I met his gaze. Family doesn't secretly add their daughter's name to a mortgage and then call her when the payment is late. Family doesn't spend her money on vacations and brunch and then tell everyone she abandoned them. My mother flinched as if I'd struck her. Jake grabbed the pages, skimmed the first paragraph, and his voice cracked. "This is insane. I can't pay this back. None of us can." I leaned back. I know, and I'm not expecting you to, not all at once. But I'm done living in a world where you pretend to be the victims, and I'm the selfish career girl living overseas. If you ever tell a neighbor, a cousin, or Facebook that I left you with nothing, I will show them these numbers. I will show them every transfer, every bill I covered, every time you chose Starbucks over the electricity bill because you knew I'd bail you out. My mother shook her head repeatedly, whispering, No, you wouldn't humiliate your own family like that. I shrugged. I don't plan to, as long as you stop lying. Then I clicked to another tab. The one with their resort reservation confirmation. The familiar logo filled the screen, along with their names, dates, and a note at the bottom displaying the last 4 digits of the card on file. My card. And about that family trip you're so excited for, I added, my voice still faint. Eddie, you might want to sit down for this part. My father frowned. What are you talking about? I pointed to the status line under the reservation number. Cancelled. 3 days ago, I said. I called the resort and the airline. Since the bookings were made with my card and my account, I had every right. The package has been refunded. The flight credits have been transferred. So when I told you at the door that I wouldn't be babysitting while you went on vacation, I closed the laptop halfway, just enough to see all their faces at once. What I meant was, there is no vacation anymore. Not without me. Not without my money. Not ever again on my dime. My father lurched up from his chair when he saw the word cancelled, as if he could intimidate the screen into changing. You had no right, he snapped. Those are our tickets. I didn't flinch. They were bought with my card, from my account, with my money. The right was entirely mine. He opened his mouth to argue, but I was already clicking to the next window. And that brings us to the house we're sitting in right now. On the screen was an email from the bank with both our names on it, Gary Miller and Claire Miller, co-borrowers. My father stared, his face losing all color. My mother whispered, Claire, please, not this. We told you it was just paperwork. I swallowed the familiar ache in my throat. You told me it was a formality. You told me it wouldn't affect me. But I've been the one covering the payment, sure. T falls on this mortgage for years. Every time you missed a bill, it damaged my credit too. I clicked a button, and a small video call window popped up in the corner of the screen. My financial advisor's face appeared, framed by her home office in London. We had spoken before I ever boarded the plane. Hi, Claire, she said. Is now still a good time? I turned the laptop slightly so my parents could see her. Perfect. You remember my family situation? My father hissed. Who is this? I answered without looking at him. This is the person who helped me understand exactly what being a co-borrower on your mortgage means, and what my options are now that I'm done bailing you out. The advisor introduced herself politely, then got straight to the point. In calm, measured language, she explained that as a co-borrower, my credit was tied to their house, that missed payments and constant shortfalls were damaging my financial standing, and that I had the right to request the bank remove me from the loan. In practice, she continued, that means the remaining borrowers would need to qualify for the mortgage on their own. They might have to refinance. In some cases, if they cannot meet the lender's requirements, the property may need to be sold to settle the debt. My mother shook her head, her voice trembling. You can't do that. We can't afford to move. We can't afford a higher payment. The advisor's tone remained gentle but firm. That is a matter between you and the lender. What I can say is that Claire is not obligated to keep her name on a loan she does not benefit from, especially when she has been consistently covering the difference. I thanked her and ended the call. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. The room seemed to shrink, the walls pressing inward. My father turned on me. You're going to make your own parents homeless over some numbers on a screen? I looked him straight in the eye. No. I am going to stop letting you gamble with my future while you act as though I owe you my entire life. If you can afford resorts and plane tickets when you think I'll be here to babysit, you can afford to sit down with a bank and figure out how to pay for your own house. I reached into my bag once more and pulled out a folded letter. This is my formal notice that I will be stopping all automatic payments related to this property. The bank will contact you directly from now on. I'm also closing the joint checking account Mom convinced me to open just in case of an emergency. I air quoted the words without meaning to. My mother made a choked sound. But that's where the grocery money comes from. That's where we pay the utilities. How are we supposed to manage? I took a slow, steady breath. The same way every other adult in this country does. With your own income, with your own budgeting, with your own consequences when you overspend. I opened another tab showing the monthly auto drafts I had set up over the years. Mortgage supplement, power bill, internet, streaming bundles, grocery deliveries, car payment top-ups. All of them had my name listed as the payer. As of today, I said, my cursor hovering over the cancel button for each one, these stop. You will receive bills in your own names. If they're late, that's between you and the companies, not between me and my credit score. Jake finally spoke up, panic edging his voice. Claire, you can't just pull everything away at once. At least give us time. I'm looking into more hours. I'll sign up for extra delivery shifts. I swear, just don't do this to us. I turned to him. You're 34 years old. You have 2 children. You should have been doing that years ago without me waiting in the background as a safety net. He stared at the table, jaw clenched. For a moment, I almost softened, almost slipped back into the role they had written for me. The fixer, the quiet helper, the girl who would cry in the shower and then open her banking app to make the problem disappear. But then I remembered their laughter at the door. The way my mother had said, "You'll babysit," as if it were a line item on a checklist, and that softer part of me shut down again. I clicked cancel on the auto-pays one by one. Confirmation emails chimed on my phone. My mother's breathing grew rapid and shallow. My father sank back into his chair, staring into space. "This is cruel," he muttered. "You're punishing us." I shook my head. "No, I'm finally paying out of a role you all wrote for me without my consent, and I'm giving you the chance to be honest about what you can actually afford without using my bank account as a crutch." I closed the laptop and stood up, my legs shaky but steady. "After this," I said, "if you decide to tell anyone that I abandoned you, just remember, I have every receipt, every bill, every transfer. I'm done being the villain in the story you tell others to make yourselves feel better." I picked up my suitcase and added quietly, "You wanted a real vacation, maybe this is it. A vacation from pretending I'm your built-in solution to every poor decision. Let's see how you handle life without that." My father finally snapped when he saw me wheeling my suitcase toward the hallway. He jumped up so fast his chair screeched against the tile. "If you're walking out after this little performance," he barked, "don't bother coming back. You're not welcome in this house if you're going to hold money over our heads." My mother reached for my arm. "Gary, stop. She just needs to calm down. We can talk about this," she said, but she didn't move to stand between us. Jake stared at the floor, silent and defeated. I paused in the doorway, hand on the handle, every muscle trembling. A part of me, the part trained over decades, wanted to drop everything, apologize, promise to figure something out just like I always did. Instead, I straightened my shoulders and said, "You're the one who decided my value here was me's. You're by what I pay for. If I'm not welcome without my credit card, then I was never truly welcome at all." My father jabbed a finger toward the door. "Get out," he seethed. "And don't come crying to us when London chews you up and spits you out." I almost laughed at that. London wasn't the city that had been devouring me alive. This kitchen, this house, this dynamic, that was what had been consuming me for years. I stepped outside, the bright California sun hitting my face, and pulled the door shut behind me. No one followed. No one called my name. The only sound was Lily and Noah arguing over a cartoon in the living room, blissfully unaware that their vacation had just evaporated. I ordered an Uber and dragged my suitcase to the curb, feeling more homeless than I actually was. The driver loaded my bag into the trunk and asked, "Where to?" I took a deep breath and gave him an address I had never shared with my parents, a high-rise in downtown San Diego, just 15 minutes from their quiet cul-de-sac but a world apart. 6 months earlier, after one too many midnight money transfers and guilt trips, I had used my savings and my steady UX design salary to put a down payment on a small one-bedroom condo. I had told my family I was just thinking about moving back to the States someday, but the papers were already signed. The plan was to move in slowly, quietly, once I figured out how to disentangle myself from their finances, without causing an explosion. Tonight proved there was no gentle way to do it. When the Uber pulled up to the glass building, it felt surreal. I swiped my key fob, wheeled my suitcase through the sleek, empty lobby I'd only seen twice before, and rode the elevator up to the 8th floor. The condo smelled of fresh paint and new carpet, not like anyone's cooking or stress or quiet desperation. It just smelled empty. And mine. I dropped my suitcase in the middle of the bare living room and stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. For the first time in years, my phone wasn't buzzing with a, "Can you send something until Friday?" or "The card got declined at the grocery store, can you fix it?" I opened my banking app and went through the last few expenses I still covered that weren't in my name. The family Disney Plus account, canceled; the Hulu bundle, canceled; the Spotify family plan, the shared cloud storage, the random Apple charges for games the kids had downloaded, canceled, canceled, canceled. Each confirmation email felt like cutting a string that had been tightly wound around my ribs for a decade. I brewed a cup of cheap grocery store coffee in my brand new, barely stocked kitchen and sat cross-legged on the floor because I didn't even own a couch yet. In the quiet, without my mother's constant sighing or my father's blaring television, the doubts rushed in like a tide. What if I'd gone too far? What if they genuinely couldn't keep the lights on without me? What if I had just become the selfish, ungreat, full daughter my father always warned me I'd turn into? Then I remembered how my mother had opened the door as if I were a maid reporting for a shift. I remembered Jake's joke about the kids wiping their noses on me while they all laughed, assuming I'd simply slide into my assigned role and make their plans possible. And beneath the fear and the guilt, something else settled in my chest for the first time in years. A thin, fragile, but undeniable layer of peace. They were going to feel the impact of my absence, no question. The bills would arrive, the late fees would stack up, and the life they'd built on the foundation of my invisible paycheck would begin to wobble. But tonight, in this tiny, echoing condo, there was no one to save but myself. I took a sip of coffee, opened my laptop again, and watched as new emails began to arrive from the bank, the utility companies, the streaming services, all confirming the cancellations. For the first time, my family was truly on their own. The first sign that my decisions were actually hitting home didn't come from a phone call or a text. It came via Facebook, about a week after I moved into the condo. My friend Emma sent me a screenshot with a simple message, "Have you seen this?" It was my father's profile. His name was right there above a long, dramatic post about how some kids forget who raised them the second they get a fancy job overseas, and how he and my mother had been left with nothing right before Christmas. He never used my name, but he didn't have to. "Our daughter flew in from London and decided money was more important than blood," he had written. "Pray for us." Beneath it were comments from people who had known me since I wore braces. "So sorry, Gary. That's awful. Kids these days just don't understand family. You gave her everything, and this is how she repays you." One woman added, "If she won't help, maybe set up a GoFundMe. We'll share it, brr." Stomach twisted as if I'd swallowed ice. He was doing exactly what I had warned him not to do, casting himself as the helpless victim and me as the cold-hearted villain, rewriting our history for an audience that had no idea how many of their bills I'd paid in silence. Our minute, I paced my tiny living room, phone in hand, fingers hovering over the call button. I almost drove back to that house. I almost begged him to take it down. I almost offered to reinstate one of the payments just to stop the humiliation. The old version of me, the one trained to fix everything at any cost, was clawing at the inside of my chest. And I pictured the spreadsheet on my laptop. I pictured the email tying my name to their mortgage, the stacks of transfer records. The way my mother had looked past my face and straight at my suitcase when she opened the door, as if I were a delivery driver dropping off a package. That mental image snapped me back to reality. Instead of calling my father, I opened my email and pulled up the thread with my financier. For L advisor. I told her about the social media post, about how my family had been using my money for years while claiming financial hardship. I asked one simple question: was there anything else I needed to do to protect myself now that I had cut them off? She responded with a calm, detailed reply about documenting everything, saving copies of every transfer and bill, and ensuring that the bank and any relevant agencies had a clear picture of who had actually been paying for what. She mentioned that in situations like mine, where one person is unofficially supporting a household that may also be claiming certain benefits or hardship, it could be appropriate to request a review to ensure everything was transparent and above board. I didn't need a step-by-step manual. I just needed the reassurance that I wasn't crazy for feeling something was deeply wrong. Over the next few weeks, while my father continued posting vague complaints about ungrateful kids and this generation, official envelopes began arriving at the house on their quiet street. I didn't see them myself, but my mother's frantic texts told me enough. "Did you talk to the bank? We got a letter about reassessing the loan. They want updated financial information." Another day, early on a Monday, came a barrage of messages. "There's something from the IRS. I'm freaking out. I thought you said everything was fine. Why are they asking questions?" I had never said everything was fine. I had said I was done smoothing. Things over in the shadows. The bank wanted updated documents for the mortgage. The utility companies demanded full payments instead of the partial ones I'd been slipping in at the last second. Like some invisible janitor mopping up a mess no one else would acknowledge. The comfortable financial fog they had been living in was dissipating, and there was nothing left to hide behind except the stark reality of what they could actually afford. Jake finally texted, asking to meet at a coffee shop near my building. When he walked in, he looked diminished without his usual sarcasm as armor. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, stubble covered his jaw, and a delivery service thermal bag was slung over his shoulder. He dropped into the chair across from me and got straight to the point. "Dad needs to shut up online," he said, rubbing his face. "Those posts are making everything worse. He's embarrassing himself, and Mom, and honestly, me too. And I know you're mad, but some of this, the letters, the calls, you did something, right?" I took a slow sip of coffee, letting the silence stretch for a moment before answering. What I did was stop pretending we were all being honest. I talked to professionals. I made sure my name wouldn't go down with a ship I wasn't steering. If that means some systems are finally noticing where the money has actually been coming from, that's not my fault. He stared at the table, then admitted he'd signed up for more delivery shifts, sold some of his old D-Tech gear, and moved his kids into a smaller room so he could take on a roommate to cut his rent. "It sucks," he said, his voice low. "But for the first time, I'm actually seeing what stuff costs. Like, really seeing it. Groceries, gas, daycare. I didn't get it before. I just knew if it got bad enough, someone would text you." Meanwhile, my mother began selling the designer handbags and home decor she'd once proudly showcased on social media, listing them on Marketplace with captions like "barely used," when I knew exactly how often she'd carried them to brunch. The new flat-screen TV my father had bought after his surgery, the one he'd justified as recovery entertainment, disappeared from their living room. In my cousin's holiday photos, it was replaced by an old, boxy set hauled up from the garage. Their truck was finally repossessed one gray morning after too many missed payments, the kind of scene they used to cluck their tongues at when it happened to a neighbor. Now it was their driveway, their sidewalk, their quiet humiliation as the tow truck hauled away a symbol of a lifestyle they could no longer finance. Through it all, my father kept my number unblocked, but he never once called to apologize or tell the truth. He just kept launching little verbal grenades online, vague posts about betrayal and ingratitude, hoping someone would carry them back to me so I'd feel guilty enough to return. He told anyone who would listen that his daughter had abandoned him for Mon, and status, conveniently omitting that most of the money had been flowing in the opposite direction for years. I didn't respond publicly. I didn't jump into the comments to defend myself. I didn't write my own dramatic post with attached screenshots, even though a petty part of me desperately wanted to. I didn't have to. I had my receipts, I had my advisor, I had my own credit finally beginning to untangle from theirs, and more importantly, I had distance. Every time I saw someone share his story about the cold daughter in London, or heard through the grapevine that he was holding court at the local bar about what a disappointment I was, all I could think was, if they knew the real math, if they saw even one page of that spreadsheet, they wouldn't be asking why I walked away. They'd be asking how I stayed as long as I did. By the time Christmas approached again, the Miller household had transformed into a different universe, and so had mine. I learned about the changes in fragments, a tagged photo of my mother shopping at a discount store instead of her usual boutique, a grainy picture of Jake's kids playing in a small apartment living room, not my parents' backyard, concerned comments from old family friends, asking if everything was okay. I didn't reach out. I focused on my job in San Diego, on building my professional portfolio, on furnishing my condo one paycheck at a time. I bought a secondhand sofa, a small artificial tree for the corner, and strung up cheap fairy lights that made the empty space feel warmer than it had any right to. Then, one rainy Tuesday in December, someone knocked on my door. Through the peephole, my stomach dropped. It was my mother. She looked smaller, somehow. No full face of makeup, no carefully styled hair, just a tired woman clutching a reusable grocery bag to her chest like a shield. I let her in, my heart hammering. She stood in the middle of my living room and turned in a slow circle, taking in the sofa, the view, the tiny tree with its 3 mismatched ornaments. "I didn't know it looked like this," she said softly. "I always pictured you in something bigger. Fancier." I shrugged. "This is what I can afford without paying for 2 households." She winced as if the words physically stung. Then she opened the bag and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a check, not for $62,000, not even close, but it was something. "It's from selling things," she said quickly, her eyes shiny. "Bags, some jewelry, that coffee table you always hated, and I've been picking up extra hours at the office. It's not much, but it's a start." I told Jake we can't pretend it was all a misunderstanding anymore. For a moment, I just stared at the check. It wasn't about the amount. It was about my mother, who had spent years acting as though my money grew on trees, standing in my small, very human-sized living room and admitting out loud that she had treated me like an ATM. She sat on the edge of the sofa and began to cry. Not T. He loud, performative sobbing from the 3 a.m. FaceTime call, but quiet, broken little sounds. "Your father still says you betrayed us," she said. "He tells everyone you turned on your family because you think you're better than us. But I can't keep saying that, not after seeing those papers, not after the letters from the bank. We did use you." I did. Sat next to her, leaving a careful space between us. "I'm not asking you to hate him," I said. "I'm asking you to stop letting him rewrite what happened just so he doesn't have to feel guilty." He nodded, wiping her eyes. "Jake's working, like really working, driving late-night warehouse shifts. He moved into a smaller place. The kids share a room now, but at least it's a place he pays for himself. He wanted me to tell you, thank you for the spreadsheet, Burr." Actually laughed at that, a short surprised sound. "I didn't make that for him," I said. "I made it for me, Burr." He looked at me carefully. "Do you think someday we could have a Christmas where you come over and it's just dinner? No money talk, no hidden bills, just us." "Burr." My throat tightened. "Maybe," I said. "But that only happens if everyone in that house understands I am not their safety net anymore. If I come, it's because I want to, not because there's a payment due. Brr, brr." She nodded again, stood up and hugged me. A real hug this time, the kind I'd been longing for years. When she left, I slipped the check into a drawer. I didn't cash it right away. I just needed the symbolic gesture, the proof that for once, the flow of money was pointing in the other direction. As for my father, the last thing I saw from him was another vague post about family turning their backs. I muted his profile, and then finally, I blocked his number and his social media accounts. It felt less like slamming a door and more like closing a wound that refused to heal. That Christmas Eve, I sat alone on my sofa, the tree lights blinking softly, a cheap mug of hot chocolate in my hands. And for the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel obligated to be anywhere else. No flights to book, no babysitting schedule to follow, no emergency transfers to make, just quiet, just a space that was mine,